Hello and welcome to PSG Review. The end of the year is no longer very far away. A few more matches left before Christmas, depending on when you hear this. Perhaps just one, but at the time of recording, there are two of them. How is the season going so far? Let's have a little bit of a look into it. And also, of course, how does life look on the other side of the new year?
You are listening to PSG Review. Here's your host, Mikko.
It has been a while. I will be the first one to admit that I have been doing PSG Review now for almost 3 years, and even if I say so myself, I have been fairly consistent with it. A weekly podcast, that's been the tagline, but now there's been a bit of a break, and that is part of life, I guess. There are a few reasons for it. First one is that life's been happening in my literal darkness, meaning very little daylight here where I live this time of the year. I've been quite busy as well with many other things. For instance, I have a book project on a completely different topic with a friend of mine, and we have been finalizing the manuscript. It's got nothing to do with football or PSG, but life has been happening in general. There are a lot of things on the agenda, and it hasn't helped that the world has been in such a mess, and I guess continues to be, of course, that talking about football has felt even a little bit futile in all of it. That is what it is, but there's also another reason. And that is what to say about PSG at this point. I feel like until very recently, a few days ago pretty much, our game could have been analyzed simply by saying, not too bad, but not at all clinical. Essentially, that has been the status quo for most part of the autumn, and I had said that so many times in every episode and there was very little changing, so saying it over and over again in slightly different words, well, that didn't feel like a great use of my time either. I will see how the future goes. Who knows the future? Not me, but what I do know is that here's an episode of PSG Review for you. I appreciate you listening to it right now, whatever you are doing with it, wherever in the world you are. And from the statistics, I know that there's a wide variety of countries tuned in, and as a geography and map nerd of some sort, that means a world to me. We're all here now. Thank you very much. And thanks to all those people also who had PSG Review in their Spotify Wrapped list. It was very nice to see those ones online as well. Spotify is another bizarre company, not a great for musicians, so I feel very torn about the platform. But what is clear to me is that I appreciate you listening to this show from there or wherever else you are listening to it from. Thank you very much. You can find me online. I'm trying to make the move from Twitter to Blue Sky, if that is at all possible. I think it's a much better platform at this point. It's nothing new, basically. Actually, it's something quite old because it is what Twitter used to be before it's downhill, but the football Twitter has been very slow to relocate. So if you use Blue Sky, you can find PSG Review there, and it'd be very cool if you gave it a follow. So, of course, also is on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter as well. As I am recording this now on Monday the 16th, later today, there is a CAF award ceremony. That's the African Federation. It happens in Morocco, and Ashraf Hakimi is nominated for the Player of the Year there. So the best African player of 2024. And by the time you're listening to this, the award may have already been given, and you know who got it. I think Hakimi is a perfectly good candidate for it, but you have to also admit that Atalanta's Nigerian Ademola Lookman, who of course last summer was also connected to us according to some transfer rumors, has a good shout with his Europa League final victory hat-trick and then only defeat of Bayer Leverkusen in the entire season. So it would also be quite fair for him to get that. I haven't really watched his other matches as much, but with Morocco underperforming in the African Cup of Nations early on this year, I'm not sure Hakimi has had the season that would deserve it. Although, of course, he's really great right now. He's a really wonderful player as things stand, but a full year, that's something else. Of course, for there not to be a double standard here, I will say, as I do during the whole Ballon d'Or nonsense, that it is an individual award in a team sport, and those things are a bit sketchy to me. I'm not a big fan of these ideas. Nevertheless, good luck to Hakimi. There's no deep dive into it, but last night as I record this, PSG was playing their last home match of the 2024, and it was against the in-form Olympique Lyonnais, who came to pay us a visit at Parc des Princes. The talk about how good they are right now had been all over the internet leading up to this match. A lot of huffing and puffing, yet in the end, PSG's main enemy on the evening was once again their very own selves. As per usual, Lyon scored one goal, but essentially was very lukewarm at best. And it really reminded me when earlier this autumn PSG traveled to Marseille to play Le Classique, and they of course aren't even playing in European football at all this season. I mean, OL at least had that excuse, and Marseille was also supposed to be in form and great form at that, but essentially it was one massive anticlimax from their angle, and same pretty much with Lyon, I would say. Nantes, who are in the relegation battle right now, were a much tougher opponent this autumn than either one of those two big teams, so to speak. That's just a fact of life. A lot of talk also about Ryan Cherki from Lyon. Many PSG fans are drooling over him, and here's what I have to say about him. He is undoubtedly a great talent, technically brilliant, but I feel like there's a reason why he's still in Lyon. I mean, he's been technically brilliant, wonder child for a long time now, and he no longer is a child, but there's not a massive line of big clubs after him. He's fundamentally quite inconsistent, so sometimes he seems like a world class, but then he can underdeliver for a long period of time as well. I'm not watching his matches religiously. It's an observation nevertheless. His attitude doesn't convince me at all, and of course right now I would not think we should get involved with the business of his management. One, Faisal Amari, whose other client and son also, Kylian Mbappe, is giving us run around in the courts. Even now he was substituted off mid-match, perhaps a bit inexplicably, but nevertheless that is what happened. In the Olympics he was playing scattered minutes and he hasn't yet been even fairly close, I don't think, to a proper national team call. I feel like there's a reason for all of this. Not everybody agrees with me, certainly online I see a lot of people being quite uncritical of him, but I think that there are reasons for all of these things. I don't know if there was a reason in last night's match against us that he was substituted off, but in general for those other things, I can see reasons, and this is not me saying he's not a good player, like I said, just that I don't see him as a very good match for us. Our Champions League campaign has been exactly that, what I said in the beginning of the show, and I have said it pretty much in every episode this autumn. It is not bad, but it's just not clinical at all. We have dropped points in very stupid manner, and yes, we should be able to avoid conceding unnecessary goals, but also with the opportunities we have had, we always needed to just score a few more goals to cover even those work accidents that sometimes can happen, when we concede a goal, when there is a lapse in concentration or whatever, but you just need to be able to outscore the opponent. Essentially, that's what it's about, and that's what we have been unable to do. And there's been a lot of drama around it. Dembele was benched early on the campaign against Arsenal in London for his behavior, whatever class he had with Luis Enrique. I don't think it was ever fully clear, and to be honest with you, it doesn't really matter too much what the details of those things are. It is what it is. And against Bayern he took 2 yellow cards. Both of them were very foolish and unnecessary in my opinion, so he missed the Salzburg match entirely due to his suspension. So essentially he has been missing what would it then be 2.5 matches out of the whole campaign, and he's one of the players who is more experienced players who've been playing tough matches on a very high level. He should be showing example to the younger players, which we have many. So there's been that, and now against Lyon we have had also some players who were expected to be in the team sheet, I suppose. They were left out wearing their civvies at the Parc des Princes players box, watching the whacking of Lyon from afar. That's Milan Skriniar and Randal Colomwani. Presnel Kimpembe also there. He's another conversation altogether, and it's difficult to say whether he's ready. The players always think they are ready, but of course there's also the coach's opinion of it, and then there's the doctors, medical staff, their opinion of it, and I think that basically there might already be go ahead by the medical team, but the coach didn't think that he's ready, and there's been some talk about frustration and all sorts. We will see how these things are going to go. Essentially, we are in a situation where there is a case that is building up in the folder that is titled Luis Enrique as a PSG coach and his future as a PSG coach. he is a very stubborn man. That's an observation. That's a fairly sort of like a neutral observation. He's a very stubborn man. He follows his vision with few, if any, compromises. And in this kind of job, you kind of have to be you have to be a little bit stubborn. It's like when you're a good striker, you need to be a bit selfish. You have to, really have like this massive belief in your abilities, because that's also what brings you results when you are coaching this kind of thing. Maybe you have to have a little bit of a notions of grandeur as part of your being. And all of that is pretty fine if he can deliver. If he can give us a project that is going to meet the expectations, whatever those expectations are for you. I suppose everyone's going to say fair play, and that's what it took to get there. But if not, if he's unable to deliver, there are already a good handful of arguments against him. I suppose this stuff, it piles up quite quickly. If the results don't seem to suffice in the long run, it could be a problem, but we're not there yet. And I think for once PSG has a little bit more patience, as a structure. Basically, I guess I'm talking about Nasser Al-Khelaifi to quite a large extent, but we will see how the whole of this thing goes. One of the players that have come back on top of Gonzalo Ramos, of course, and more about him a little bit later, is Lucas Hernandez. And this makes me very happy because Lucas Hernandez brings in a few different but invaluable things to this squad. One of them is leadership and grit. I feel like some of the Champions League matches during this autumn, such as the draw against PSV Eindhoven, let alone the defeat against his former employer Atletico Madrid, that's where Lucas Hernandez used to play before Bayern Munich, could have been avoided should there have been a little bit more leadership on the pitch. I felt like maybe something like that could have made a difference. Someone with experience and broad shoulders and a loud voice. Another aspect that he gives us, of course, is rotation for our backline. That's very valuable because Nuno Mendes needs a rest sometimes, and so do our center backs Marquinhos and William Pacho. Of course, we could have rotated more even before with Lucas Beraldo, and in my opinion, very much not shared by Luis Enrique, Milan Skriniar, but Hernandez is a Swiss Army knife of a defensive player, so that's something that will help during this long season and the spring that is going to be ahead of us after those couple of matches that are still before the new year. A friend of the show, Mike McNally, who has been our guest here before, was talking to me about Lucas Hernandez and his injury. And now he works in the field of sports. He's a professional in that field. He's got quite a CV from the North American sports, baseball to be precise. And he raised a concern about the recovery time of Lucas Hernandez, considering the type of injury he had, that it has been very quick. Essentially, it has been maybe too quick. Hopefully not too quick with him, but really we hope that there won't be a relapse considering his injury history and the fact that he no longer is in early 20s. He's not an old man. He's approaching 29 in February, but still, with a little bit of luck, he could be a really significant player for us for the rest of the season, even if he might not even be a starter as such. I already mentioned Gonzalo Ramos. I have been pretty vocal, I would say, in my support for Gonzalo Ramos in the last 1.5 years that he has been part of our operation. I really believe in the power of a target player, a proper 9, not a false 9, but a proper 9, a fox in the box. Just someone whose job it is to score goals, and in very limited amount of minutes since his return from a serious injury, there's been some decent numbers by him, a few goals and assists, and many attempts that have been not far from going in. Now, I am aware that if almost goals would count, life would look very different. We would have definitely defeated Dortmund last spring and made it into the Champions League final, but almost doesn't count. That's a known fact. But having said that, it's still a positive sign when you can find yourself in the right places and get a good opportunities, and with the form building up, more of those will go in inevitably. I believe inevitably, but we will see. He has come from a standstill into a full speed in a matter of a few weeks, really, and he's already giving us some results, so hopefully it's only going to improve from here on in. Against Lyon, a standout player was another forward though. That was Desiree Doué. Now some people have been suspicious of his level and ability early on this season, but I would say to those, remember Bradley Barcola last season. Now we're thinking that he's one of our key players. He's one of the important players, the top scorer of the season from our side. But he didn't start off as a starter, of course, when he came to PSG. He didn't start off as a star or a national team player. It took him a while to get there, all of those things, and it really started only happening around this time of the year when he was able to raise his level and also get the opportunities to do so. So now when we are watching Desiree Doué, he has had his chance and he has grabbed it with both hands. It was a really great match by him against OL, but also other impactful performances recently. It seems that he has found some sort of liberation in scoring and assist. With him, it looked like he was getting a certain amount of minutes, but he was so nervous about scoring. He was lacking the looseness because he was trying to force things, but you can't really force things. Now, he seems to have a little bit of a liberation. I don't know if I'm reading too much into the situations, but when I'm watching him playing, for instance, against Lyon, he just seemed very free and very fluid, and he was just enjoying his life on the pitch. And that's something that we want to see also from Bradley Barcola, because he's also kind of gotten himself a little bit into this situation where he looks like he's trying too hard. I think about Desiree Doué that he is a player that could make a great contribution to our club and its history, even in a bigger scheme of things. Because last season when I saw him playing against us with Stade Rennais, I was really impressed. Like really impressed. I was sold on the idea that night when they were playing against us. And I'm not saying that it was exactly the same feeling as when then at the time 16-year-old Eduardo Camavinga outshone our entire midfield in the same red and black shirt few years earlier, but it was something. So I trust in Doué's ability, and a good thing is also that he will be able to provide Bradley Barcola with some much needed rest on occasion, because his level right now isn't quite what it was in the beginning of the season, like mentioned, and he has clocked in a lot of minutes, both in PSG but also for the national team. He's up there with Hakimi and Pacho with the minutes most played this season. Not quite, but they're in the mix, not very massively far away from those who have essentially not been resting very much at all during this whole season. Both of them have been key players, as has Bradley Barcola, but the rotation, rest and healthy competition, I believe it will benefit everyone in this scenario. I already mentioned a few players who have fallen out of favor in Luis Enrique's strict regime. These players are Randal Kolo Muani and Milan Skriniar. Now, Skriniar isn't at all Enrique's style of player. That's plain to see. It is what it is. He just isn't, but every time he has played, and that's strictly after the international break since our usual starting centre-halves travel to South America on back, when Milan Skriniar has been playing, he has been very good. You certainly have no complaints. It's a very small sample size, of course, so it's difficult to talk about consistency, but he isn't a bad player. Of course, he's not a bad player, just a bit of a misfit into our system. There's talk about his potential move in January with his salary. I don't think it will be easy or a simple transaction, even if possible at all. But in Italy, they say that Serie A, there's been some interest by Juventus at least. Who knows what type of interest? I mean, often these clubs like to make pretty awful offers, not very competitive ones at all, but who knows? Like said, I don't consider his departure a straightforward affair at all, certainly not in January, but if the stars align, anything, I guess, is possible. Well, Randal Kolo Muani, he's been pretty good player for the French national team recently. Also, he's not a bad player. He's a very good football player, but his opportunities in Paris are very sporadic, and to be frank, he has been unable to seize those moments. I hate to say this, but he has been unable to seize those moments, and it's not easy to seize the moment when, like I said, the opportunities are so sporadic. So it's not like there's any consistency, it's not like there's any continuation, and you have to carry it in your back the whole time that if you don't deliver, if you don't score a goal, if you don't get assist, whatever, if you don't act in a decisive manner on the pitch, you might not get a new opportunity again for, I don't know, weeks or months or whatever. I like Randall Colomwani as a character a lot, and I do wish that things would have clicked, but so far not so good. And his departure is also being talked about. Of course, he was hired for a very high transfer fee from Frankfurt, so it's practically very difficult to not make a huge loss if he is sold. And even with the loan deal, I will consider us lucky if we don't have to pay a good chunk of his salaries. But none of that makes me happy. These are more melancholic matters within the operation, these players. It's a gold business at the end of the day, very ruthless. So hopefully some good solutions are being found for both of these players. In a kind of similar category, not exactly the same, but a similar category, there's one more player we need to talk about, and that is Donnarumma, Gianluigi Gigio Donnarumma. There's been talk about the talks to extend his contract, but the performances haven't exactly improved during this autumn. He has that Leivin Kursava energy, and I say this with certain amount of fondness to both. I like both of them. Basically, there can be masterful moments of pure magic followed up by such a lapse in concentration that it cost us the entire match. This has happened quite a few times now, and if we are being honest, if Manuel Ugarte didn't fit into Enrique's plan and system and then he was sold, and if Milan Skriniar isn't suitable for them either and he's sidelined waiting to be moved on, then why hold on to Donnarumma who doesn't fit into the system either? What makes him so special that he would not be treated like they treat other players who are sort of in a similar situations? Why would he be above that? And I don't have any particular issue with the player myself, and he is an excellent shot stopper for the most part. I think that on his day he's really very close to one of the best in the world, if not the best. And we are also, as we have always been, very aware of his shortcomings, and we've been talking about them for years now. The funny thing is, to be honest with you, I feel like he has learned to play around some of these weaknesses with the ball in his foot pretty well. And there's rarely those mistakes which you might remember from the previous seasons. You know, they used to happen fairly often that he would just make some terrible mistake, lose the possession, and then there would be a goal. Something like that. But now sometimes he just lets the ball in that normally he wouldn't, that a world-class keeper shouldn't. Something that should be quite an easy stuff for him, or certainly so it would appear, and it just goes in for whatever reason. Now his backup keeper Safonov isn't a solution either. That's been clear to me since the day he arrived. Some people online seem to like to say that maybe he's that. I haven't seen anything that would make me think that he's that kind of a world-class keeper that would put us into a conversation about winning the Champions League, because what else are we talking about? Like, I don't want us to obsess about winning the Champions League. I've been saying that many times. I think this has been one of the biggest mistakes, if not the biggest mistake of the whole QSI era. And what Nasser Khalifi came out early on of the project to say that PSG is aiming to win the Champions League very quickly. And I think that's something that we have paid a price for. But at the same time, while I reject that idea entirely, what are we hiring for? What are we recruiting for if we are not recruiting with that in mind? It's a process, but you have to work towards that goal. That's not to say that it's something that should happen in the next sort of like May, early June, whenever the final is being played. It's to say that there must be some kind of movement towards it. Even if this is a year of building and it would not even go as well as we hope so, you have to build towards something. That's what a project is about. There's no shortcut to this, to be honest with you, to this goalkeeper situations. There are very few under-the-radar world-class goalkeepers out there. I mean, I hadn't heard of Safonov when he came to Paris, and a lot of people seem to be in the same boat with me. So there are just not that many under-the-radar world-class goalkeepers available. Maybe Ronwen Williams from South Africa has Mamelodi Sundowns, who of course was 9th in the Yashin Trophy ranking this year for the goalkeeper of the year based on his Africa Cup of Nations heroics. Really impressive stuff there, but there aren't many players like this. Not saying that he would be one, it certainly would be a great risk, but PSG must really make a considerate and carefully calculated moves with the goalkeeper situation, because if we don't count on Donnarumma, if we don't want to give Tennis even a chance, and I'm not suggesting that he should at this point be number one keeper, but certainly the second option, then we might have to redo the whole plan and get all new goalkeepers, or at least a few of them, because otherwise, what is the point? What is the plan? PSG is still domestically unbeaten this season, the only one in France, but of course, before the end of the year, there are a few very challenging away matches that, to be fair, both have potential to break that spell and backfire. That's not to be defeatist. I don't think that it will definitely happen. I think that we should be able to beat both Monaco, who we play now midweek, Wednesday evening in Lyon, as well as Lens, who we visit as the kick-off for the new Coupe de France campaign for PSG. Neither match will be easy, but both should be very much winnable, and no reason to aim for anything below that, of course. In the past week or so, after our win against Salzburg in Champions League and after the continuing and ever-deepening crisis within Manchester City, a lot of focus has also gone to the fact that it is indeed that giants on its knees that we play next in the Champions League, and that of course appears quite appealing prospect, all current conditions considered. But I'm fairly conservative when it comes to these things. This match is such a long way away after the new year, and a lot of things may change. There's a little bit of rest in between, very much includes their form that can change, and it also includes our form as a team. But right now, predicting that match seems like predicting the weather for the 1st of May based on how it looks outside from the window today. So I, for one, won't get ahead of myself, of course. We will have to approach that match as a competitor and go after the 3 points, and we will do that. But it will be played based on the context and conditions of that night, and it's a must-win for them too. So it won't be an easy match, I don't think so at all, and don't let their current struggles to fool you. And if those struggles continue, and it will be easy for us, if that should happen, well, obviously that is to our advantage, but it cannot be assumed, or assume away if you want, but you'll do that at your own peril. Before any of this, year 2024 needs to be wrapped up, and that will happen within the next week. PSG women's team is going from grievance to grievance. I hate to be the bearer of bad news once again. I sound like a broken record, but what can I say? But I will promise you this, I will keep this short and very firm. We need to start afresh. No other way to do it. Now Maria-Antoinette Katoto has informed that she will leave at the end of the season, and while she's trying to be all mysterious about it, I imagine that chances are that she will join Lyon like so many before her. And at this point, what hurts me the most, rather than the betrayal, is the lack of imagination, such as it seems to be. I mean, I don't know if he's going to go to Lyon, but I would not be very surprised if she did. There's an off chance that she goes elsewhere. Who knows? But the real issue is the sidelining, the heart and soul of this team, the player who has sacrificed a lot for us, Grace Gheoro, the people's captain. The armband was taken away from her by the new coach Fabrice Abriel, and now Gheoro herself has been entirely blacklisted from the squad. She's not even on the bench, and this is nothing short of scandalous to me. I don't usually call for people to be fired. I'm a fairly compassionate person in my own estimation, but mistreating Gheoro and mismanagement of the whole operation is so infuriating to me that there's only this that I have to say. The coach, Fabrice Abriel, and the sporting director, Angelo Castellasi, at least those two need to go. Maybe more, at least those two. They need to be fired immediately. There's nothing they can do anymore to fix things up. They've done too much damage by now. They are the problem, and I hate them ruining this team. I like this team. I like watching them. I hate them ruining this team. Now it's highly unlikely that they will fire themselves, of course, and that is why Nasser Al-Khelaifi needs to take the matters into his own hands. I mean, if he wants to meddle in some team, like meddle away in this team, this is the team to meddle with. You know, put your mind into this and let's meddle. I have some good ideas if he needs them. I wish I had seen our ultras taking the stand to support the women's team, to support Grace Gheoro at Park last night, but the talking points there were quite different, unfortunately. The question is, are we as fans abandoning our women's team? Because right now it's unraveling in front of our inaction. PSG women have finished their year by now, and who knows what the transfer window will bring in January. The men's team will be playing against Monaco in the Principality at Stade Louis II on Wednesday night, and then on Sunday in Coupe de France at Stade Bollard against AC Lens. Then that's that for 2024, and the new year will start also against Monaco on 5th of January, and that one is Trophée des Champions, which will be played in Qatar this year. Basically, the next match is crucial for the Ligue 1 against one of our rivals there, that's Monaco, although we have already confirmed the utterly meaningless non-trophy of being the champions of autumn, but nevertheless, the so-called champions of autumn. Then, of course, after that is Coupe de France. That's a cup competition, so you're either in or out after 90 minutes or extras on top of it if necessary, and then it's a final match, so it's a trophy or not. Pretty intense time, but a little bit of rest there also in the middle, so fear not. Thanks for listening to PSG Review. My name is Mikko, and until next time, peace.